Hey everyone, it's Connor here from Durham Hearing Specialists. I hope you're doing well, and welcome back to a very difficult video. This is, well, as you can see, we've got this very hard crust which has been shoved right up against the eardrum. So this is pretty much as deep as you can go. And I think what's happened here is that this patient has used a cotton bud and he's just basically shoved it in further and further and further until bang, he's experienced discomfort, hearing loss, and a feeling of fullness. So if you kind of cast your eye to maybe sort of 11, 12 o'clock, you can see that bluish skin, kind of bluish grey skin, just lurking behind the impacted debris. That's the eardrum, which is very sensitive. And the problem with this case is that, first of all, it's not comfortable for the patient at all for me to be digging around in there, but there's really no other option. This has to be removed. So it's in a very sensitive part of the ear canal, as well as the eardrum being sensitive. The ear canal in that area, the inner 2/3 of the ear canal for most people, is very sensitive to touch. So there's no lovely sort of cushion underneath the skin of fat or cartilage, anything like that. So it can't really be prodded or poked. It's just very thin skin, around 1/10 of a millimeter thick, roughly, onto bone. So if you scrape against it, if you prod it, if you apply too much pressure, the patient is going to jump, which is bad news if you're lurking near the eardrum with a metal suction probe. So we've got to be very careful here. The other problem is that this plug, it's been pushed down against the eardrum, and then the patient has applied sort of half-heartedly some drops. And what that's done is it's partially softened it, and it's, you know, this debris has then sort of seeped into the recesses and then rehardened. So just before your ear canal meets the eardrum, you have the ear, it's not a smooth plane, in other words. So the ear canal doesn't attach to the eardrum perpendicularly, if that's a word. So it goes down and then up again. So what you have are these recesses or trenches or depressions, fosses, whatever you want to call it. And the plug is then anchored in those recesses. So that makes the whole thing more difficult. Additionally, there's some fungal growth there as well. So that's what the kind of white furry stuff is. That's it's probably an aspergillus type fungus. So we've got that going for us, which is nice. So what I'm doing here, as opposed to going down there with a hook or a curette or crocodile forceps, what I'm having to do is, first of all, loosen up this debris so that I can get it away from the eardrum, which it's currently pressing on, which is uncomfortable for the patient. So the liquid that I've applied is sodium bicarb, and what that's done is it's kind of loosened everything. It's given me a little bit of purchase. It's given the plug a bit of a moist surface so that I can go in there. This is now a large suction probe. I've cranked up the machine to max. I can go in there, move it away from the drum, and you can see it's kind of tilted forwards now. I didn't actually intend for that to happen, but it's quite a good thing for me, because now we've got that top lip, and now I can go in there with crocodile forceps and just yank it out of there. So in the perfect sort of world scenario, we should be able to get these kind of impactions out without massive amounts of trauma, and that's what you'll see. So there's no bleeding, there's no hematoma, which is bruising or bleeding under the skin. Lacerations, there's no perforation, obviously, of the eardrum. It just looks a little bit red, or a little bit rosy, the skin of the ear canal, and that sort of grey-blue skin is the eardrum. So that was a successful procedure. However, this is the patient's other ear. It's even worse, actually. So I'm not sure what he was thinking, but I think he's gone down, again, done the same thing in this ear. He's basically shoved the cotton bud in as far as it can go, and you know, he's obviously stopped when he's realized that it's then hurting, and his hearing has become muffled and there's fullness in the ear. More sodium bicarb. There's also a fungus, you know, fungal overgrowth. So the fungus is obviously feeding off of this debris. And this side was slightly more difficult because the impaction is kind of held in place with dead skin in the recesses. So what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to unstick everything by kind of kind of shoving it vertically. And again, we can see the eardrum lurking back there at sort of 12 o'clock, 11 and 1, that kind of blue-grey skin. So again, I've just got a fine end here, a fine end suction probe. This is quite a lot of suction, so I've got this cranked up to maybe 550, 600, minus 600 millimeters of mercury, I think. More sodium bicarb. And as you've probably gathered by now, the bicarb doesn't really soften it. I've not left it in long enough for it to dissolve the impaction or soften it in a meaningful way. But what I'm hoping it's going to do is kind of seep in behind the plug and seep into those recesses that I mentioned, and just give a little bit of action just to kind of unstick the plug and help me kind of bring it out. Because also, whilst it doesn't soften the debris in a huge way, it does moisten the surface of it, so that then the suction probe can kind of latch onto it and I have a little bit more pulling action. So now I've got a regular suction probe here. And normally you would never dream of going this close to the eardrum with a full-sized regular suction probe, because it is deafeningly loud for the patient. However, we've got this, you know, gigantic plug against the eardrum, so I'm not too worried about it. If you just look underneath the plug, sort of 6 o'clock, you can see that skin I was talking about, which was holding it in place, which is a pain in the neck. There's also fungal growth underneath the plug as well. So, you know, had we left this in there, you'd probably find that as the fungus matures, you'll see spores, and that's usually a good sign of what type of fungus it is. So if the spores are black, it's Aspergillus niger. If it's kind of bluey, kind of shady blue, then that's Fumigatus. Yellow, Flavus, and so on and so forth. Flavus, whatever. So there's the plug. And again, eardrum doesn't look too bad considering. The ear canal is just a little bit rosy, but actually everything's okay. The whole point of this is that because we've been careful, there's no trauma. So apart from the patient just kind of disliking the procedure, but nothing we can do about that. But hearing immediately restored, he's feeling a whole lot better. The feeling of fullness is gone. And the video is kind of highly edited, as you can imagine, but the whole procedure took about 20 minutes, which isn't bad. So there we go. I hope you found that video interesting and entertaining. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below, and I will try my very best to get back to you. And of course, I will see you guys on the next video.